Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ryan Huemmer. I'm a BFA acting major in SOT of CFA with a concentration in MT. And all of these acronyms basically mean that I'm an artist. So for my Keystone project, I didn't really conduct a statistical analysis or write a research paper or observe drunk rats in a lab, as fun as that might be, Christine. I made some art. Which has made this day a little intimidating because I don't have any hard and fast results to present to you or any conclusions to be drawn, because I believe that art by its nature is inconclusive. When I create something or when I consume other people's art, I like to live in the questions that they provoke for as long as I possibly can. And in cases when the art is really well constructed, that question is often very specific. In my case, for the play that I wrote, Flailing into Happiness, it was the question of happiness. What is it? Now, I could have gone about that, exploring this idea in many different ways. And this is the only slide I have, so just like focus here. I'm not big on PowerPoints, don't really fit my free flow interpretation. I could have done this in a multitude of ways, but the way in which I decided to explore this question was through the form of documentary theater. And for those of you who don't know what documentary theater is, do not fret, because I'm about to dive on in. So, documentary theater is basically interview-based theater. It's a live performance that's written based upon interviews conducted by the playwright, in this case me, traveling around and interviewing a bunch of different people around a specific event or a specific topic or a specific theme. In my case, I traveled to about 15 different European countries, including Morocco in Northern Africa, and interviewed people about the question of happiness to sort of establish what a cross-cultural, multicultural idea of what happiness is might be. And then the playwright, still me in this case, comes back and transcribes all of these interviews and compiles them in such a way that a through line or a story emerges from all of these interviews put together. And hopefully this through line illuminates something of the original question or the original idea behind the interviews. And so then, in many cases, what happens is that a single actor, in this case, also me, woo, bit off a lot this time. So this actor, me, performs the people who I've interviewed as characters in this play. And during my performance, I took on about 20-ish different characters, distinguishing between them based on dialect, based on mannerisms, based on oral posture, based on gestural life, really anything that you can use to tell two people apart. I totally took advantage of that. And doing this process, I discovered a couple of things that made this project different than the traditional form of documentary theater. The first one being that this was a very personal journey for me, traveling for 6 weeks in Europe to different places I'd never been, alone, sometimes with people. It was difficult, and I realized that my own personal narrative, my own bias, and my own subjectivity was actually what tied all of these people I met together. So rather than ignore that, I embraced that and made it part of the piece. So it was unabashedly a biased interpretation of all of these people I met through my own lens and my own time that I spent with them. The other thing that I learned is that sometimes the transcripts of the interviews that I conducted, when I looked back at them, didn't quite capture exactly what I felt when I was in that moment, living in the present with that person. And so there were a lot of instances where I tried to make it work, tried to make the dialogue that I captured work, and it was just not working. The gears weren't meshing. And so I drew on some other skill sets that I have aside from acting, and choreographed movement sequences, wrote some poetry, sometimes on the spot, improvised, sang some songs, and even in a couple of cases made homemade gnocchi for everybody to eat, because Italian chefs' happiness is cooking. And so it really taught me that I can't always rely on another form to help me create my own art, and sometimes it's necessary to really branch out and create your own pathways in art, especially in art, I think, because that's what it is. It's creative. So now I think I've talked a lot, and I've told you a lot about this project. And I'm not a big teller, I'm more of a shower. So what I'd like to do is show you one of the characters from my play. His name is Nadir, and normally I do this sitting down and with a whiteboard, but we're gonna improvise, and it's gonna be great. I gotta stay in the light, Grace, you know. All right. I'm Nadir. Great. Do you have a last name? No. Cool. That's what I thought. Could you tell me about a time in your life that you were most happy? Most happy? Yeah, just like a time in your life that you think encompasses what happiness means to you. Well, nothing in particular, really. I just think it's something that comes and goes. Okay. Could you tell me about any tiny little things in your life that make you happy? Nothing in particular, really. Anything could make me happy, and the same thing could make me not happy. It just depends on the context, I guess. Could you go into any more detail about that, please? No. Do you just not believe in pursuing your own happiness? No, I don't believe in all that bullshit. I think it's a waste of time to try and pursue it or build it or make an image out of it or whatever. I don't believe in all that bullshit. Do you ever pretend to be happy? What does it mean to pretend to be happy? I suppose it means to put on a guise of happiness in order to make others feel more comfortable, even though, well, then that's not acting happy, that's just acting. Oh, okay, but I would say that it's wearing a social mask of pretending to have happiness when you don't actually have, well, you can't have it. It's not yours to have. It's just a state you go through. It's if you're acting happy, you're acting. It's not acting happy, it's just acting. So, if you were to define happiness, how would you do that? Well, I can't define it, really. I mean, I don't think it exists. I mean, it exists, but it's just a state. If you want it simply, I guess I would say that it's the ascending variation of emotions. And if you want that in simpler terms, I guess I would say, if you think about your state of mind as something that's linear in terms of time and intensity, and it sort of goes up and down, you feel bad, you feel good, you feel bad, you feel good, and it fluctuates like a stock market. Then it's that ascension of going up that's happiness. So you see, it's not about a specific time or a specific intensity. It's more about the trend, I guess. And when you ask people what their happiest moment is, I guess what they're going to give you is that climb. And the one they're going to tell you about is the steepest one, because that was the most impactful. And anyways, that's what they define as happiness, just the variation from one state to the next. Thank you. Yeah.
So how did you select your specimens for these interviews?
Oh, yeah, that's an excellent question.
And second part of the question, did you keep it consistent across all those countries?
So the question is how do I like select the people who I interview, and whether or not I keep it consistent amongst countries. And the answer is again, I'm an artist, not a statistician. So I tried to what's the word, like make it consistent across the countries, and I realized that was just not possible for me. I did it so much more based on intuition. I would engage with somebody, maybe a waiter or the guy who was renting me my bike, and if they were like just the right amount of awkward that you can tell that they might actually be interested in talking to you. You know how you can like see the inside of someone's soul if they're just a little bit awkward? It's true. Think about it as you're going about your day today. You'll see. It was really based on those interactions where I got my like foot in the door, that then I would be like, oh, you know what? You might be interested in talking to me, so let's have a conversation. Or it came from like friends of friends who happened to be in Stockholm, or couch surfing, the app. I would stay with random people and interview them. So it was a mixed bag. Yeah. Yes.
Did you take video recordings during the interviews or just audio?
I took video recordings during some of them. Some of the material that I ended up using was drawn from experiences, because there would be people who I just met on the street, and I kid you not, a woman in Croatia walked up to me in a marketplace and just started telling me how happy she was, unprompted, and I was like, universe? So it varied, but I did have a lot of video recordings. Yes.
Can you tell me a little more about Nadir, where he's from?
Yeah, Nadir is from Morocco. He was the son of my host mom in Morocco, who was a friend of a graduate student here at BU. And he is one of the most nihilistic people who I have ever met, in a really beautiful way, and probably one of the smartest people I've ever met, who also does absolutely nothing with his life. Which is a fascinating person to talk to, and also the most aggravating kind of person to talk to. But we met and immediately established a sort of a brotherly dynamic, so that's why the interview was as combative as it was. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much for performing for us. That was wonderful.
Anytime.
My question, but I wonder if you would give us any advice whatsoever about how we would flail toward happiness.
So at the end of my piece, I always do a sort of direct address to the audience where I talk about, okay, so I just like played 20 different people and talked about all like their 20 different conceptions of happiness. And usually the conclusion that I end up drawing is that it's really something that changes every day. And you have to let it change, because letting how you perceive happiness and letting what happiness means to you and what makes you happy change is part of what makes you human. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. And being able to change your mind about things. I think that gives us independence, and yeah, of course. Dope.